Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for making it here on time on a public weekend. We're very grateful and thank you for such a great energy in the room already. I hope you can feel it, and we're very grateful. You're obviously a very refined group here today. So, my name's Mark Bunn. I'm the CEO of the newly established David Lynch Foundation of Australia, and on behalf of that foundation, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here today for what I think is going to be an extremely informative and enlightening event. Just before we get underway, I would like to both acknowledge and indeed honour the traditional landowners of this site, the Boon Wurrung and Wurundjeri people of the East Kulin Nation. Consciousness and creativity. 100 years ago, we were in the agricultural age. We went through the industrial age, the computer age, technology age, and today we're said to be in the information age. Thought leaders and leading scientists today tell us we're on the doorstep of a new age, the age of consciousness. What is consciousness? It is the most fundamental level of human awareness. Both Eastern science and Western science today describe it as a field of infinite intelligence, energy, creativity, a field of all possibilities. And we are very fortunate today to have two people who are arguably some of the greatest minds on the planet today in this field. In a few moments, I'll be introducing our first speaker, Mr. Bob Roth, but during his presentation, he'll be introducing you to someone who I think needs no introduction to many of you, the iconic filmmaker, artist, writer, sculptor, Mr. David Lynch. And we say that because, for two reasons. One is that David will talk to you today through question and answer. He's very bright-brained, very unique, unbounded thinker. And so we wanted to let you know that so that some of you could maybe start to think of questions you might have for David. We wanted to let you know that he is open to any questions. They can be on film, writing, the arts, the creative process in general, how he manages to have such fabulous hair after all these years. I might ask him how he manages to have any hair at all after all these years. But he's open to anything. And when he does that, what we'll do is get people to just come up to the front of the stage here, just in an orderly line. I think someone's going to coordinate, our dear Veronica. But the whole idea is to get your questions ready, and he'll take Q&A for as long as that Bob and David feels is appropriate. The other reason we do mention that is because today's session is being filmed. And in fact, it's going out on a live stream through Facebook all around the world, potentially. So if you've told your spouse that you're taking the kids to Moomba today, or you're scared the federal police are going to be watching today and you don't want to be seen, maybe wear some dark sunglasses or borrow one of my wigs. So after that, Bob will finish with a little bit of inspiration, and then I'll come back at the end just to give some further information for any of you who may be interested in any of the topics that have been discussed so far. But now I'd like you to listen as I introduce you to our very, very special guest, Mr. Bob Roth. Bob always likes double applause, so thank you for that. He'll get some more after. Bob is one of the world's greatest authorities on the brain, consciousness and meditation. For over 45 years, he's been a teacher of the Transcendental Meditation technique and has taught thousands of people, from drug addicts to hardened criminals to war veterans to everyday mums, dads, students, through to high-level performers, the top-level politicians, captains of industry. People like Hugh Jackman and Katy Perry consider Bob their personal meditation advisor. Recently, Bob has condensed all this wisdom into a new book called Strength in Stillness. It was picked up by one of the world's largest publishing companies, Simon & Schuster, and with 1 or 2 weeks of its release, it became a New York Times bestseller. In Australia, we had Bob starting media this Wednesday. By lunchtime of his first day, it had become the #1 book on Amazon for all books. Bob's greatest passion, however, through all these years, has been, however, helping those less fortunate in our community. As I understand the story goes, about 12 years ago he approached his good friend David Lynch and said, "David, we should create a foundation to raise money so that we can teach Transcendental Meditation to people that otherwise couldn't afford it and would most benefit from it." David said, "That's a great idea." And quick as a flash, Bob said, "Great, let's put your name on it." The David Lynch Foundation was born, and since its inception 12 years ago, it has delivered over $30 million in grants to help over 600,000 men, women and children find relief from suffering and trauma. So ladies and gentlemen, not only is David Lynch and our good friend Bob Roth men of great intellect and mind, they're both men of great heart. So I'd ask you to join me in giving a very hearty and heartwarming welcome to our dear friend Bob Roth.
I thought Australians were understated. Tall poppy and all that sort of thing. I can't tell you how wonderful it is. Well, I will tell you how wonderful it is to be here. I just came from the Beast of the East in London. And before that, I was in New York City with non-stop cable television news about what's going on from Washington, D.C. So it is such a relief and such a pleasure to be here. And it reminds me a lot of growing up in Northern California and in the San Francisco Bay Area. The moisture in the air just feeds my pores, so I am so happy to be here. And really grateful that you've all come out to hear a talk on consciousness, creativity, with a focus on meditation, the science of meditation. And I want to begin this, before I say anything more and we hear from David Lynch, that this is an informational meeting. I want you to know, I ain't pushing nothing on nobody. This is just so you can have an understanding of the science of meditation and also some of the science and the work that's being done with Transcendental Meditation to wake up consciousness, to enhance and foster creativity, and at the same time eliminate the buildup of stress and tension and fatigue and anxiety that cramps and cuts off the flow of creativity. So I just wanted to sort of say that. I like to define consciousness, in addition to the way that Mark just put it, as very simply wakefulness. Just how awake are we? We know there's sleep state of consciousness where we're not awake. We know there's dream state of consciousness where it's kind of illusory. And then we know in waking state of consciousness, we got a whole range of waking states of consciousness. Sometimes we're completely dull. Anybody here a school teacher? Or teach, you know that there's a range of waking state of consciousness. Some kids are just out, dull. Some kids are awake and they're metabolizing new ideas. So there's a range of consciousness. Creativity, according to Steve Jobs, was simply for him the ability to connect things together. He said lots of times people are disappointed to hear from the really creative people that it's just the ability to connect things together. They're almost embarrassed he was embarrassed to admit he saw something and then he connected it with something else, and then he used some of his intuition or experiences from the past, and then something came out which within a few minutes or days was just obvious. So with those two definitions, wakefulness and the ability to connect things together. Now, obviously there's much more to the creative process than that, but I only agreed to talk for 4 hours now. So. Now, I have been teaching meditation, Transcendental Meditation, for 45 years. And I ain't your typical meditation teacher. I ain't into woo-woo. I'm not so much into New Age. I love science. I love things practical. I love to understand what's going on in the brain. I love things to be real. I'm a skeptic, big time skeptic, but I ain't a cynic. I'll stop saying ain't. I'm not a cynic. I'm not from like Texas here. So I'm not a cynic, because if I was a cynic, I'd never get out of bed. But it's a very interesting thing, if I could just take a moment, of how I got here to be teaching Transcendental Meditation for 45 years and meditating for almost 50 years, so quickly. I grew up in a very political family. And my desire as a high school student, particularly my secondary school student in my final year, was I wanted to make a better world. So I was really into politics. This was 1967, 68. I was so political and so irritating that, you know the book, The Grapes of Wrath? Well, I had a column in my high school newspaper called The Gripes of Roth. I did. True. Everything was going wrong. Fetching about everything. Then I started working for Senator Bobby Kennedy. You know, he was going to run for president. And I got so, and believe me, I am going to get around to meditation here, and creativity, but just a little background. I got so inspired. I thought, oh, here's something. I wasn't political left or right. It was, let's do something good to make a better world. I saw Bobby Kennedy speak in San Francisco on June 1st, 1968. I remember sitting there with 2,000 other people thinking, I'm part of something good. And 4 days later, he was gone in Los Angeles. And I was devastated. And I went off to the University of California, Berkeley in 1968 with the intention of becoming a US Senator like Bobby Kennedy and changing the world. That was my resolve. So I get to Berkeley, and there was so much division and so much divisiveness and so much on both sides of the aisle that I quickly realized that politics was not going to be a channel for me to try and heal the soul of the nation. It's good, but it wasn't fundamental enough for me. So I decided education, and I'll write educational curriculum, and I'll work with kids one at a time and empower them. So I'm going to school full-time. Here comes the meditation. I'm going to school full-time, working full-time. I have army tanks parked outside my door, literally, because of all the riots over the Vietnam War. And while I didn't really know the word stressed, I was a poster boy. For first year of college, university is impossible anyway, and this was on steroids. So a friend I was working that I knew, I found out he was meditating. And he was a normal guy. Berkeley had some very strange people. And he was down to earth and normal and kind and smart and clear. And I found out that he was meditating, and I said, what's this? It was not even a word in my vocabulary. And he said, you want to find out? I'm not going to tell you, go find out. So I went to a talk on TM, and a woman gave this wonderful presentation. It was nothing strange, the place was nothing strange. It was just rows of people talking, and at the end, I stood up and I said, how much of this do I have to believe in for it to work? Because I like the idea of accessing a calm and a center of my creativity. I like that. I like the idea of getting rid of stress. I liked that. But I didn't want to buy into something. And she held up a piece of chalk, and she dropped it in her other hand, and she said, you don't have to believe in gravity for the chalk to fall. You don't have to believe in meditation, this meditation, for it to work. So I remember I said, okay, hour a day over 4 days, I'm young, I can invest the time. And I learned. And almost the first or second, one of my first meditations, it was so significant, so restful, so real. I remember my first thought after that wasn't, oh, I'm going to get enlightened. It was, oh, I want to teach this to inner city school kids. And that was June 28th, 1969. And I taught TM in San Quentin Prison, and Apple Computer, and everywhere. And then 13 years ago, I had one of the most fortunate crossing of paths in my life, and I met David Lynch. And that was the story. I said, David, we should start a foundation to raise the funds to bring this to kids who wouldn't have access to it or resources. And David said, fine. And then I said, we should name it after you. And David's listening to this, I don't really know that he was paying close attention. And he said, fine. And I said, I'd like to write a press release that will go out about this. And he said, fine. You know how when you're a kid and you want to ask your parent, you're trying to pick which parent is going to say yes? I'd like to have the keys to the car and come back like at 4 in the morning. And one parent, no, and the other one's like, whatever. So I think he would just sort of, fine, write a press release. So I wrote a press release. 2 days later, it was in 1,500 newspapers because of the greatness of David and the idea of bringing meditation, transcendental meditation. And we had a conversation, and he said, how do you start a foundation? And I said, I have no idea. But it was an idea that was a good one. It was natural, it was generous, it was kind-hearted, it was authentic. And now the foundation, as you heard, over 600,000 kids, and we've started it, and now veterans and police who suffer from the horrors of post-traumatic stress, and women and children who are survivors of the greatest shame of humanity, which is domestic violence and sexual assault, and people living with HIV, and now prevention of opioid and methamphetamine, and youth suicide. Horrible what's going on. Our foundation, David's foundation, is dedicated to addressing that, but we're all at risk, so for all of us. So what I want to do is I want to take a moment and just define, everybody with me, okay? Just define, I should let you know, I'm not going to talk much longer. We're going to turn this over to David, because he is really great. But I'm just going to define meditation for you and talk a little bit about transcendental meditation. I'm going to talk about the brain. I'm going to talk about the brain, the creativity, your brain on creativity, because I love all that stuff. How many people here have tried some form of meditation? Now, you know, like 20 years ago, if you'd sort of asked that question, form of meditation, people were times have changed. And it's changed for 3 reasons. 1, stress is worse than it's ever been before. It is. The 24/7 life is just more intense than ever. That's number 1. And we also understand that it's actually killing us. It's not just like something you sort of got to buck up and be tough and don't worry about it. It's actually killing us. Second, there is no... Where do we go when we have an ailment? We go to the medicine cabinet. Well, there is no pill that we can take to prevent stress and to treat it when we've got it. We sure do a good job of masking it. We got the caffeine down really great. And we've got wine and alcohol pretty darn good at that. And we manage it with sleeping pills, waking up pills, antidepressant, anti-anxiety. And I have nothing against pills. They help. But it's not the end solution. So the third reason why there's so much interest in meditation is because science, science, and more science. You can't argue anymore. It's clear. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define what I mean by meditation. Because meditation is such a vague word. People say, well, I walk with, my meditation is walking, my meditation is knitting, my meditation is... I was going to say watching the news, but that's not meditation. That's anti-meditation. And to do that, I'm going to use an example. So we're going to dive in here. We're talking about meditation for one reason, and that is because it's a tool for developing consciousness and creativity, which is the theme of this discussion. It's not just a theory about consciousness, not just a theory about creativity. Everybody can argue forever about the theories. Is consciousness an epiphenomenon of the brain, the product of the electrical activity of the brain? Is it a field, as Mark was saying, an unbounded field that we access? And some of the most creative people say, it wasn't my idea, I just accessed that field, that idea, and it just flowed through me. To understand meditation, first of all, any questions so far? All right. To understand meditation, I like to use an analogy. You're sitting in a little boat out in the middle of the ocean. And all of a sudden you get these giant waves, big, huge waves, 30, 40 foot high waves. And you could rightfully think that the whole ocean is an upheaval. That's 3 or 4 stories high. Whole ocean is a bit of an exaggeration. Because if you could do a cross-section of the ocean out there, you'd realize that while the waves may be 30 or 40 feet high, the ocean in reality is over a mile or several miles deep. And while the surface of the ocean can be turbulent, by its nature, the depth of the ocean by its nature is silent, quiet, calm. I use that as an analogy for the mind. Surface of our mind is like the waves, active thinking mind. They sometimes call it the monkey mind. I like to call it the gotta mind. I gotta do this and I gotta do that, and I gotta call him and I gotta call her and I gotta make a list. Then I gotta find the list, then I gotta make a new list. And I gotta slow down, but I gotta get going. And I gotta get to sleep, but I gotta get up. Anybody? Not? At one time or another? So that's that. And it's a natural human desire. A natural human desire. I'd like to have some inner calm, some inner clarity, some inner silence, some inner stillness, some inner creativity, some inner connectedness, and the operative word there is inner. And the question is there such a thing as an inner? And if so, how do we get there? And this discussion is the discussion of meditation, because that inner not only is a field of, this is, hi David, a word that David hates, calm. It makes him want to throw up, David. Calm, it's a level of equanimity, it's also vibrant. It's the source of our creative ideas. That's the theory, that's the calm. So, the purpose of meditation has been to give access to that, calm the mind. According to science, 3 basic types of meditation. Anybody here, first it's called focused attention. Anybody here do a meditation that asks you to clear your mind of thoughts or concentrate on a thought or your breath? Anybody do that? So this is called focused attention. And in the analogy, it's to stop the wave, stop the noise in the mind. You have equanimity if you can stop, of your mind, if you can stop the thoughts which are seen to be the disruptors of calm. It's called focused attention, and when we do that, it creates something called gamma brain waves, which are 20 to 50 cycles per second in the front left prefrontal cortex. And when your child is concentrating on studying for a math exam, that gamma brain waves are alive, awakened, because it's focused. So that's first. It's a concentration form of meditation. Second type of meditation is called open monitoring. How many people here have tried mindfulness? Yeah, mindfulness techniques. Now I'm going to pause here, caveat. We're not talking better or worse. We're talking outcomes, just outcomes. Because the things I'm telling you about, the 3 I'm telling you about, have research showing that they work. Different outcomes. Vitamin C is different than vitamin D. So just different outcomes. Open monitoring, the idea of open monitoring is thoughts are not the bad guys. The thought of Joe isn't a bad guy. But the content can be the bad guy. So if Joe done me wrong yesterday or 20 years ago, and the thought of Joe comes up, anybody have that one? So it's content. And so in mindfulness, open monitoring, we learn how to live in the present, in the moment, not in the past, not in the future, but how to dispassionately observe my thoughts rising and falling. Thoughts rising and falling. And I do that with body scans, I do that with observing my thoughts, my breath, my feelings. It's a coping mechanism that creates something called theta brainwaves, which are pre-onset to dream. And that is this mildly, I love this, this is interesting. No, Bob, but you just keep talking. It's a beautiful day, just talk away. Theta brainwaves, 6 to 8 cycles per second, and that's a sort of pre-onset dream. Also, there's alpha 2 and beta, but the main predominant is that. And that can be a wonderful coping tool to allow us to learn how to live in the moment, particularly when things get tense. We can do a breathing exercise that can help us gain some calm. Both of those are described as cognitive processes. It's a discussion, it's addressing thoughts, either getting rid of thoughts or having a new attitude towards thoughts, like waves, cognitive processes. The third is called self-transcending, according to science. And Transcendental Meditation is part of that. And in this discussion, we recognize that there is, this is important, there's a vertical dimension to the mind. There's a transcendent dimension to the mind. We feel things deeply. We love deeply. We have experiences occasionally that could be described in athletics as the zone. Anybody have that? You're playing a sport and then time melts away and you're just in a flow and everything just moves. Anybody had that? Yeah, it can be just for a moment. I remember when I was a kid, I was a good swimmer, but I didn't like it, and I was a bad basketball player, but I loved it. So I'd have swimming practice, and I'd come home and I'd shoot baskets, and in 10 in a row, bang, 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 and just in a flow. And then I go, wow, I haven't missed. And of course, then I missed the next 5. But you're in that flow. Where so there's that transcendent, that depth of an experience, and we remember it. It's natural. It doesn't happen that often, but we remember it. Transcendence, if you look that up in the dictionary, means to go beyond ordinary human limitations. And so in Transcendental Meditation, we don't mind the thoughts. That's natural. Waves are part of the ocean. You can't get rid of the waves. just get rid of them all, just slice them off. Thoughts are the expression of me now. In this meditation, thoughts are a part of the process. We access, what we do is we hypothesize that deep within every one of us, this is a hypothesis, deep within every one of us right now is a level of the mind that is already calm, excuse me, David, silent, my own silent, still self. That's the hypothesis. It's there, but I've lost access to it. I'm up here. And in Transcendental Meditation, we receive, we can talk more about this later, a mantra, which is a word or a sound that has no meaning, and we're taught how to use it effortlessly, so easily. Even I teach 10-year-old children who are on the spectrum, who can't close their eyes for a half a minute without bouncing around the room, and they love TM. They love this. It gives them a calm and a silence and a clarity that they love, and energy that they love. Now, what happens when we have that experience? Let's just pause for a moment. Let's just be a skeptic here. So here I'm up here standing, and I'm about to turn this over to David, and I'm just standing, and I'm talking about that there's this quiet field inside, and it's a transcendent field, and Mark said it's an unbounded field, and it's field of consciousness, and we access that during Transcendental Meditation, and that's creativity, and you could be thinking, right. Says who? Sounds poetic. Who wouldn't want that? How do we know? And again, we look to science. Because our mind and our body are connected. And if our mind is anxious about something, what's our body like? That's actually what it sounds like. And so if during this meditation, self-transcending, we're accessing these deeper, more transcendent levels of me, it must show up in a profound way in our body and brain. And it does. And I want to take the last few minutes to talk about this and the creative brain and then turn it over to David. Okay? When the mind settles, and it's nothing, I gotta tell you, it's transcendental meditation. It sounds so sort of strange. How do you know when you do it for 20 minutes? How do you know when your 20 minutes are up? You look at your watch. You're not going anywhere. You're just settling down. You know how a child can go from 0 to 60, like a matter of seconds, get all wound. That little kid is boiling over with rage and he's, just hothead, and his poor little body is tense. Well, the opposite is also true. Cooler minds will prevail. Cool, calm, and collected. The body is looser, more relaxed. That's natural. We're just accessing that. So what happens? Alpha 1, the brainwave signature is completely different than waking state, dream state, sleeping, or the mindfulness, focused attention, and open monitoring. Alpha 1 is 8 to 10 cycles per second, and that is a state of deep settledness, yet wide awake. And afterwards, Alpha 1 is great for listening, because you're not noisy. It's like after you meditate and then your child is telling you for the 10th time about a movie that he saw, and you're not going, you're right there, you're listening. Or anyone, it's settled and awake. So Alpha 1 is that. The other thing that it does is it gives the body a state of rest, uniquely, deeper in many regards than the deepest part of deep sleep. You all heard of cortisol? Cortisol is a hormone secreted by the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys. We need a little bit of cortisol to get up in the morning. We don't need the amount of cortisol we have now. Too much cortisol undermines the immune system, floods the hippocampus, which is the brain, it's a memory center, shuts down the memory, doesn't allow us to digest food. And that's why if a person's really stressed, they get sick a lot, because the immune system is compromised. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. But the main thing I want to get to right here is something I find really interesting, and you can all Google this, because it just came out. New studies on the creative brain. See, we're coming back around to the creative brain, and then we're going to hear from one of the most creative minds in the world. They used to think that the regions of the brain, the right hemisphere of the brain, was the artist, the abstract thinker, the creative side of the brain. And the left side hemisphere of the brain was the analytical, the scientist, the point value. Now they know that's not the case. Now they know it's connections within the brain. It's networks within the brain. You're waving? Oh, they're over there. Hi, we're just starting. Then we have a confirmation and a bar mitzvah coming. And you're the... So here's the interesting thing. So what is the creative brain? There's 3 elements of the brain that's involved in the creative process. So we consider ourselves an artist, or we're all creative. When we solve a problem with a child, it's art, it's creative, it's innovation. So we all have moments, we all have to be creative. There's 3 parts of the brain for creativity. One is called the prefrontal cortex, or the frontal lobe, size of your fist, right behind your forehead. And that's called executive functioning. That's decision-making, planning, judgment, sense of self. That's the attention network. That's when you tell your child, now pay attention. What does that mean? Focus. Now there's another part of the brain when we're not focused, when we're just we've finished doing the work, we've finished figuring out the problem, it's Saturday morning and we've got the weekend off, and this attentional part of the brain is not on overdrive. And it's called, not a very interesting name, the default mode network. Put that in a headline. Default mode network. The default means what's your brain doing what does it default to when you're not focused, when you're not seriously concentrating? And it turns out this part of your brain is really important for creative ideas. It's called the imagination network. It's the part of the brain, the brainstorming. Let's blue sky, no editor. You ever have that? Let's just talk. Let's just, every idea counts. Or you're taking a hot shower and then you couldn't figure something out and all of a sudden got the idea. It's the wandering brain, it's the daydreaming brain, it's the part of the brain that computes the past and the future and my sense of self, and that's called the imagination network. Now, for most people, they either daydream, get the idea, and then here's another one for you, you'll love this title, the salience network. It's another part of the brain that says, okay, you might have maxed on the salience network, but okay, that's the part of the brain that says, it's time to focus, Bob. It, subdues the brain, it subdues the wandering mind, and now I focus. Or, you're not getting anywhere with this thing, shuts down the attention network, and now imagination network takes over. One or the other. In the most creative people, both are enlivened at the same time. So you can have a free flow of ideas while you're putting pen to paper. And when you do mindfulness meditations, which as I said has benefits for coping skills, but because it's a focused effort, it suppresses the default mode network. It suppresses that. When we do, but it enlivens the attention network. When we transcend, when we experience that unbounded creativity that lies within, it enlivens the default mode network, the imagination network, and the attention network at the same time. And here's the last word. You've ever heard the word neuroplasticity? That means the neurons or brain cells that fire together when you're in that transcendent state. Quiet, settled, it's so simple, so effortless, so relaxing, so nice. When you're in that transcendent state and these neurons are firing together for here and here, they wire together after meditation. So that becomes the new norm. And everything good about the brain depends upon communication. And stress takes apart, rips apart those connections. That's why we may be a very creative person, but now we're in some position, we have to run a department, or we're under great pressure, we have to do something, and there's a deadline, and then I freeze. And that creativity, that flow of creativity stops. So, David Lynch is a very dear friend. Please welcome David Lynch.
How you doing? Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, good deal. Is Bobby disappearing, I guess? I don't have any prepared speech, and I would like to take questions and try to answer those questions. So if you all have any questions, now's a good time to ask them.
David, we're just getting some people coming up right now. Brian, have you got the microphone for people? Thank you. So Veronica, if you want to just get a little line going and they can ask their questions in time. So we're right with you, David, and thanks very much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure to speak with the great Down Under.
Hi, David. Can you see me?
How you doing?
I'm Nicolette Freeman. I'm the head of film school here in Melbourne. One thing that Bob didn't tell us was when you started to do Transcendental Meditation.
I started Transcendental Meditation on July 1st, 1973.
Okay, thanks. Because my question was going to be about Twin Peaks before and after Transcendental Meditation, but now I know it was all after. But so my other framing question is quite simple. It's what you noticed in your filmmaking practice before and after starting Transcendental Meditation, especially the idea of awakeness when you arrive at a potential film location, a room. Is this the right place to set the story? That's my question.
That's a very good question, and I can tell you my personal experience. What I noticed when I noticed, I can remember before I started and what happened to me after I started. And these things are super important. What happened to me after I started Transcendental Meditation was I had a whole bunch of anger inside me. And I always say, negativity is the enemy of creativity. So if you're filled with this anger and filled with stress and filled with all these other negative things, it cramps the flow of ideas. And what I noticed when I started Transcendental Meditation is that anger lifted away. I took it out of my first wife. I made her life a living hell, especially in the morning. And 2 weeks after I started Transcendental Meditation, she came to me and she said, "David, what's going on?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "This anger, where did it go?" It automatically lifted. I didn't try to get rid of it. It lifted away. The next thing I noticed is I'm happier. And I'm happy, like a bubble of happiness inside me. And this happiness is a fantastic thing. It means you start enjoying life more, and you start enjoying the doing of things more. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, to me, Transcendental Meditation is gold flowing in from within and garbage going out. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. This heavy weight of negativity lifting gives you so much freedom. And on top of that, gold coming in. This thing of more and more consciousness. And I always say consciousness has qualities. So like you've heard, consciousness is unbounded intelligence, unbounded creativity, unbounded bliss, happiness, unbounded love, universal love, which feeds personal love, unbounded energy. That's another thing I found is like you get more energy to do this stuff. And people are so fatigued these days, and you know they're fatigued, but they have trouble sleeping, which is sort of strange. This blows that away. You get way more energy, and you sleep like a baby, you know, and at night or whenever you take sleep. And it's unbounded power. All the power that exists is in the transcendent field, and it's unbounded peace. So you get this kind of inner peace, this inner contentment, deep, deep, deep contentment inside. It gives you a greatest feeling. And I always say life becomes more like a game than a torment. It's money in the bank to transcend every day. Money in the bank. For some reason, we human beings have lost contact with this beautiful, beautiful field within every human being. And this reestablishes that contact. And transcending is the key. Transcending, they say, is a holistic experience. All avenues of life will improve when you transcend every day. And it's so important anytime in the world, but these days it's extremely important. And I recommend this to everyone. Start this. I don't know what time it is down there in Australia, but if you can't learn, start today, then get on the ticket for tomorrow.
Okay, and anything specifically about filmmaking as opposed to other forms of creativity? Because I know you do other things.
Ideas flow. Ideas flow. So ideas are the things we need to do anything. Don't do anything without an idea. The ideas are all out there. We don't know them till they enter the conscious mind. So I pictured it like this. Every human being has consciousness, but not every human being has the same amount. When you transcend every day, whatever size ball of consciousness you had to begin with starts to expand. And when you start expanding consciousness, you expand all positive qualities of consciousness. And you can see you're really and truly making the subconscious conscious. This ball of consciousness, now it's getting bigger. You can catch ideas on a deeper level where they have more power. And this negativity lifting, that conduit through which the ideas flow, now is relaxed. It's opening up. Ideas start flowing. So it feeds cinema, it feeds, businesses, it feeds everything that you rely on ideas. And we need these ideas, and we want them to flow, we want to catch them. And this makes it possible. You can say goodbye to writer's block. You just start desiring ideas, and they'll start flowing in. So it's a huge, huge, huge thing for cinema. Every cinema student should be practicing Transcendental Meditation every day, transcending every day, and watch what happens. They're going to get more energy, more ideas, happier in the doing, relationships will improve, they'll boogie down with the team and get the job done.
Hi David, I'm John Catapan, I'm a visual artist.
Fantastic.
I'm someone who's really interested in interdisciplinarity. I'm a painter. That's what I do.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm a painter too.
I know you're a painter, and I know you're a musician. I know you're a great filmmaker. So my question is about how the different states of consciousness might intersect. For example, we heard Bob before talk about getting into the zone, what that's like being in the zone. I understand that. I understand that no matter how screwy my life is, when I'm in my studio painting, everything settles, I get immersed, I can almost taste it. It feels so good that, it starts to flow. I'm sure you understand what I mean. But is it different for you as a filmmaker? You've got the profession, the methodology of being a filmmaker, you've got the business of film. How different is that kind of consciousness to the consciousness of you perhaps being in a studio making your paintings, or now I understand you have a band and you make music? Are there different kind of levels that you go to?
No, consciousness is consciousness. It's the same. Consciousness, they say, alone is. It's just consciousness. And it's a kind of a continuum. It's consciousness. You get more and more of it, and I would say that if you start transcending every day, you'll get even happier in the painting. You'll get easier into that groove, that zone, than you were before. Ideas will flow for the future paintings, and the excitement level will rise up. The euphoria of the whole thing, the whole process will get more intense, and any kind of stress in your system will start evaporating. Your relationships with your fellow man will improve. You're going to get more energy, and you're going to get the things that used to stress you won't have that effect on you anymore. The people that you come in and make you stressful, you'll start looking at them in a different way. They'll become looking friendlier. And it won't bother you so much, and your heart will go out to them. There must be a reason why they're yelling at you or something like this, and you'll feel compassion. And also another thing that grows is intuition. Intuition is this knowingness. And in this field within, there's this knowingness. There's solutions to problems and a knowing how to get them, a knowing what the next move is. And this kind of thing grows. Another name for the transcendent is the self with a capital S. You've heard the line, know thyself. This is the self they're talking about, the big self. And it's going to be a thrilling trip for you in your painting and in your life to transcend every day.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Hi David, my name's John. I'm a visual artist as well.
Beautiful, Con.
I've been meditating, doing TM now for about 5 or 6 years, and I certainly am experiencing many of the benefits that you've just described. My question is really about meditation practice, and I often find that when I sit down, in the morning or in the evening, late afternoon, to meditate, if I have a particular problem, and I'm talking usually in relation to the art I make. If I have a particular, problem to sort through, I find when I sit down and settle, I can easily find that I concentrate on, well, I don't know about concentrate, but what happens is solutions arise to that problem. And I sometimes wonder about that. I wonder, is this a distraction? Although I am finding solutions, and that's very exciting. Or do I just allow it to happen? Does that make sense to you, my question?
No.
Well, I'm wondering.
Is this in meditation?
In meditation.
Yeah, okay.
I'm wondering, should I be letting go of my thoughts? That I find that I'm...
Okay, I understand the question.
Yeah.
Okay. The answer that I've heard is you don't meditate to get ideas. You meditate to meditate the way you were taught by a legitimate teacher of Transcendental Meditation as taught by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Yeah.
So you meditate the way you were taught, easily and effortlessly, and then when you come out of meditation, you're more refreshed, you're more energized, and you're ready to boogie, and then you go and you do your work. However, sometimes, now when John Lennon was with Maharishi in 1968 in India, he said, Maharishi, I get these ideas in my meditation, and what should I do? Should I wait and just keep meditating, or Maharishi said, okay, if you get a good idea in your meditation, come out and write the idea down, and then go back in and meditate some more.
Okay.
Now so if you get a good idea, one of the, I think everybody knows, if you catch a great idea and you don't write it down, and somehow you say, I'll never forget this idea, you don't write it down, and then you forget it, you want to commit suicide. So you write the idea down. Even if you're in the middle of your meditation, you come gently out, write it down, and then go back in. Okay. Now you've got your meditation and now your idea. But more often than not, you meditate while you're meditating and catch your ideas afterwards. When a container, you're expanding that consciousness, you're going to get more ideas, but if it happens in meditation, you can come gently out, write it down, and then go back in.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, David.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very nervous. Thank you for asking. My name is Sarah Lundberg, and I'm a filmmaker. I just last year released my first film in Render, which I'll make sure that your colleagues will bring you a copy of.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I did some things a little bit left of center making my film, such as I directed some parts of it naked. But also, in the middle
I sometimes do that myself.
But also, in the beginning of each day, I took my cast and crew through meditation before we actually started the day. I've got two questions, and first of them is, do you do something similar with your cast and crew? Do you take them through meditation every now and again to kind of prepare them for the work, or do you use something else meditation-wise?
No, I don't do that. But Transcendental Meditation is something you do. You can do it in a group, but I'm not a TM teacher, and I meditate. Each person goes within. You know what I mean? One inside. So if I'm working on a film and I meditate before I go to work, and then I do my second meditation during lunch. I go into a trailer or into a little room or someplace I find, and I do my meditation. And if someone says, David, what are you doing in that room? How come you're not out eating lunch with everybody? I say I'm meditating, and then if they're curious, they'll ask me something and I'll tell them. But I don't go around promoting, meditation, although I'm really happy to tell people about it if they ask. And so that's what I do.
My second question is, what's your passion?
My passion is catching ideas.
Thank you.
Hi David, my name is Nicole and I'm also a visual artist. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on creativity during times of grief and how one can navigate that, navigate loss and find the space to create during those times when ideas don't seem to come as easy.
That's a very good question. Okay, so loss is grieving and sadness, and there's an analogy. Some people we know, something's happened and they fall into sadness and they can't shake it. And so their friends come and they try to cheer them up, but inside that person, they know their friends are trying to cheer them up, but they are so deeply sad. And this, they say, is like a line on granite. And it's just hard to get rid of a line on granite. So if you start transcending every day, you're bringing in this tremendous happiness, and you're letting go. You're not trying; it's just evaporating. That all the kinds of negativity. Sadness is one of those things. It just starts lifting, and a little bit later, it becomes a line on sand. You can be sad, very sad, but it doesn't last so long. And if you keep on meditating, transcending every day, they say sadness is like a line on water. You feel tremendous sadness, but then it just goes. And so the secret is transcend every day. This sadness is beautiful. You don't stop feeling things in life. You don't get numb from things, but it won't last so long that it'll kill you. And if you lose someone in your life, they love that you're sad and you love them, and but they don't want you to be sad for the rest of your life. They want you, so this sadness lifts if you're transcending every day. And it's very, very important that you still feel these things, but it doesn't kill you. They lift away and you go about your work and replace that sadness with this bubble of happiness. And it saves you. You bet.
Hi David, my name is Jake. I'm a student filmmaker. It's great to meet you.
Good to see you, Jake.
I have a question that I wanted to ask you for years. What is life?
Life is a bowl of cherries.
Thank you very much.
Hello, David. My name is Dixon. It's a pleasure to meet you. I have quite a few questions to ask you, if I may, but they're very quick. The first thing is, with Catching the Big Fish, the book that you wrote, you discuss how you catch ideas and you come across some big ones and they can be really fantastic. What I wanted to know from you is how you actually connect your ideas together and how you make sense of them.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, let's see. Catching ideas for me, I always say, that's why the book is called Catching the Big Fish. I equate catching ideas with fish, like going fishing. And so, more often than not, for me, I catch ideas that are fragments of the finished whole. So, I catch, let's say, one day, a tiny fish. But this particular fish holds so much promise, and I love this fish. And let's say it's a cinema idea I just caught, and it might just be a glimpse of a character or of a mood or of a room or something, but it holds so much promise of the way cinema could say this and the idea itself, two things. And so now I say that in an analogy of fishing, I have more bait. The first bait was just a desire for ideas. And this desire is like a real good bait. And now I've caught something, so I even have more bait. And I lower that in the water, which means I start daydreaming. I start thinking about it. And little by little, if you have patience, another fish will swim in and bite on that. And more fish and you'll catch more fish, and they'll hook themselves together, and they'll start forming something. And at first, it can be very abstract. You don't know what in the world is happening, but it's still got this excitement and this promise that's going. And you keep on writing these things down, and you get a certain number of them, and it almost like then it leaps up to another level where, oh, you see how this relates to this, and this relates to this, and this has this kind of a theme can start swimming through there that you sort of see and intuit, and then more ideas will jump up, and it seems to accelerate then. So it's just a series of ideas, a flow of ideas, and that you write down and think about, daydream about.
Thank you. I also wanted to quickly ask you about your writing. You've worked with Gifford and Mark Frost over the years, and I wanted to know how much intuition works as part of the creative process when you're working with someone else.
It works the same way. You have whether you're working alone or with somebody else, you need ideas. And so they've got to flow, and another way is they can be triggered. So if you have a certain problem coming up, that, if you start thinking about the problem, it could trigger a solution, which is an idea. And there could be any number of ideas that would solve the problem, but so some are thrown out, but some, then maybe this one comes and it just is the thing. So it's thinking about the problem and getting in that world and seeing, just kind of being in there, and an idea will pop up and take you forward.
Thank you very much.
Hello, David. My name is Georgia. I wanted to ask you if being in a deep state of meditation or transcendence is like, or has something in common with being an animal or thinking like a snail might think or something.
That's a good question. It's a lot like a snail. It would be, it's euphoric. They say bliss, this field within it's an eternal field of wide awake, vibrant bliss consciousness. And when you experience that bliss, they say bliss takes up where happiness leaves off. And bliss can be physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual happiness. It's so euphoric. And this field within is electrified happiness, bliss. And your body can vibrate in it. Your emotions sing with it. Your mind is alive with it. And it's a spiritual thing. It's so beautiful. I don't know what animal it would remind me of. Maybe a kangaroo. An electric kangaroo, a happy kangaroo. You're welcome.
Hi, I'm very nervous. Thank you.
Don't be nervous.
I just want to thank you for all your work because I've adored it my whole life.
Thanks.
No worries. And when I watch it, I get a lot of bliss, and I can feel. I love how you talk with your hands. But my question is, are we going to find out what happens to Lord Palmer?
You already found out.
Really? Okay, thanks.
Hi David.
How you doing?
I'm swell, thanks. First off, thank you very much for your work and for introducing us to TM. I've been doing it because of you, so muchas gracias.
De nada.
You've said, so before Twin Peaks The Return, you've said on a few occasions at the least that you're done with Twin Peaks. What made you decide to go back?
I had lunch with Mark Frost at a place called Musso and Frank, which is the oldest restaurant in Hollywood. And I had lunch with him there before, so he invited me there, and we started talking. And it just seemed like, at that time, it suddenly started seeming exciting again. And like, they say the transcendent is the field of all possibilities. It sort of seemed like suddenly, possibilities, ideas started, jumping, and there it started.
Cool. And one more, very quick. What was the biggest lesson you learnt when working on the film Dune?
Okay, so if you are, let's say, a lot of you there are visual artists, and say you're a painter, and you're painting, and someone comes into the room and tells you they don't like that color blue, change it. And this painting is too big, cut it down. You would, if you had some strength, you would throw this person out and kick him in the street. If you didn't have strength, you would get a gun and beat him and shoot him in the leg. Okay, so it's your painting. You need to have final cut and total freedom and control of your work. And if you don't have that, it's a joke. It's not your work anymore. Why are you doing this? If you're doing it for money, fine. But if you're doing it to express some ideas that you caught and it or means something to you and you are in love with, and they have to be a certain way, you don't want anybody telling you, to change something. I always say, never turn down a good idea, but never take a bad idea. Nothing's finished till it's finished. You can get ideas along the way. But you need to have the final say. And this is so important. So on Dune, I signed a contract where I knew I didn't have final cut. And that's what I learned. Never, ever, 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 ever do that again.
Thank you.
My name's Andy. I'm a writer and a musician. In my research about TM, I came across the concept of dissociation, which is where an identity will split after a period or an incident of extreme stress. And this seems to be the state that some people are in when they find TM and they manage to become a better version of themselves, I suppose. Anyway, in reading about this, it reminded me of the journey of Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks: The Return. And my question is, are there concepts from TM that find their way directly into your works?
No, not really. Again, it's just ideas that happen to come along and that I fall in love with, or, that we or writers, if I'm working with somebody else, fall in love with. So, but it's Transcendental Meditation which opens the door to that field within, which is our big friend. More ideas, more happiness, more energy, more intelligence, more creativity, more peace is there within every human being. The big treasury, our dear friend, our self. And so it's so important for every human being to transcend every day. Like I say, for some reason we've lost contact with this field. Let's reestablish contact.
Thank you very much. And finally, are there any creative projects you're working on at the moment that you can talk about?
I'm trying to get back into the world of painting.
Just to let you know, we've got about 10 minutes with David, so we'll probably time for 2 or 3 more questions. Yeah. Thanks, David.
You bet.
Hi, David. My name is
How you
Bianca. I'm an artist and a musician. First, I just want to say thank you so much.
What instrument do you play?
I play the drums.
Nice.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for all your amazing work. I know a lot of us here would want to express the same thank you. My question for you, I guess, is about your work. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people would find your work maybe challenging or confronting or disturbing in some way. And I think a lot of people who have felt that way maybe have tried to restrict your work and what you do, whether it's, well, as you said, not having final cut or restricting your time to do what you need to do. And I would love to hear you talk about, I suppose, how you pushed past that and what it was like for you to deal with situations like that and keep true to your original idea and make it as authentic as possible.
Okay, so you never take no for an answer. You have an idea, and it's very, like I say, precious to you. You would love it. It has to be a certain way. And there's so much that you have to do between catching that idea and realizing it in one medium or another. And in cinema, it takes a long time to go from that original idea to the finished film. So much work, so many different, stages of production. So you have to never walk away from anything until it feels correct. Starting in pre-production, starting in the shooting, every single day, every single scene, every single, costume, every single prop, every single place, every single light, every single thing, you check with the idea and say, is this true to the feeling and the whole thing? And you don't walk away till it feels correct based on the idea. And, you know, and then you need, of course you need some good luck. But even if you have restrictions of money or time, you still can get this. And it's so important to get it. Don't compromise. Don't walk away before you got it. And it just won't work. You've got to get it. And so, and you need Final Cut. The only film I didn't really have Final Cut on was Dune. I didn't technically have it on The Elephant Man, but Mel Brooks, bless his heart, gave it to me. And so all the others, I had it in the contract. And so there's lots and lots of things that come along that make all this pressure. And as we know, pressure is stress, and stress is the enemy of creativity. But if you're transcending every day, life becomes more like a game than a torment. This stuff doesn't really bother you as much. It becomes sort of fun. And then you're going to get those things before you leave. You're going to make sure you get it, and then you'll have a big high at the end of every shooting day, or at the end of even editing days, and you go back and get it, you know, more tomorrow. And it's kind of a fun. It makes life fun. It makes life very, very fun.
David, my name is Ivana. I'm a writer, and I have a lot of love and a lot of gratitude for you. I wanted to talk
Bless
to
you, Ivana.
I wanted to talk to you about dreams, and I'm interested to know if your dreams changed at all after you started practicing Transcendental Meditation.
I don't go in so much for dreams. To me, dreams are sort of like, I'll tell you, you know, the thing I love about dreams is dream logic. And by that I mean, in dreams, they can be completely abstract, but you know what they mean. And cinema can say those kind of things, where it's a combination of things, pictures and sounds, that conjure something that's difficult to say with words, but you still can understand it. So I love dream logic. But I've only gotten a few ideas from nighttime dreams. But I love daydreaming.
Thank you.
Hi David, my name is Naveed. I'm a filmmaker and student of architecture. I had a question about focus and specialization. I feel there's a demand in this modern life to specialize in one thing in career. You being an artist in many fields, be it filmmaking, painting, writing, and music, I want to know what you think about this modern phenomenon towards individuals about specialization, and what advice you would give to someone interested in so many different creative fields.
I think, you know, in the last 10 years, we've all been given permission to do many different kind of things. Before that, if people they're known for one thing, they just weren't given permission to do other things. And if you say you were a filmmaker, but then you painted, they call you like a celebrity painter, or, you know, some kind of, their painting is their hobby, or things like this. And now, people can do many different things. It's sort of where the idea takes you. And it's so beautiful, because your ideas might take you into painting, but something about in the painting, in there, ideas start flowing for some other medium. And the one thing sort of feeds another. And it's just a great big creative world. And and like I said, transcending is a holistic experience. So it sort of gives permission, you know, for many, many different things. It's where the idea and the love takes you.
Thank you.
One more thing. You've heard of, what is it? Jack of all trades, master of none. That can happen too. And so you got to be careful. You don't go finish the project halfway and then go off and do something else. Finish your work, and then do the other thing. Write down your ideas.
Just cutting in briefly again, David, just for everyone in the room, just to be aware, it's coming up to late evening Friday night in David's time in LA. He's got a really big bowl of cherries just out of camera, so we're really keen to get into those. So, David, if you're happy, we've got 6 people left. If you could all make your questions really quick, and David, we're very happy if you give a really nice, short, sharp answer. So, thank you.
I've got a party of 16 and she arrives at 8. Sorry about that.
My name is Willem Kingma, and it's really nice to meet you. It's beautiful. I'm a filmmaker and a visual artist, and often I worry that a lot of people that I know who are visual artists, they kind of go into painting something or drawing something, and they kind of know exactly what they're about to make. Whereas for me, it's kind of more of like almost like something growing, like kind of organically. And I was wondering if for you it's a similar process like that, where you're almost catching ideas on the go while you're making something.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing what you're talking about, the flow of ideas, action and reaction. And so more like in painting, this is exactly the way I work. You need an idea to get you out of the chair and get you started, and then a thing starts happening. You try this thing that you thought would work, and it doesn't really work, but it gives you an idea for the next move. And I call it a flow of ideas based on action-reaction. And you do something, you react to it, and then you see the next thing. And transcending every day feeds that process. And it becomes very much fun, and in one way, you don't know where it's going to end up. But it sort of reveals itself as you go.
Great, thank you so much.
Hi David, thank you very much for everything you've done. I've loved all your films and books and everything, so it's been a great gift, so thank you very much. In the line I wrote down my question, because last time I was in one of those Q&A things I totally stumbled over myself, so I'm just going to write it out. I'm a filmmaker as well, but generally I make commercials and music videos. But what I really want to do more is make art films, like you do. I feel that the main thing blocking me from doing this is a fear that I haven't kind of lived long enough, haven't read enough books, haven't watched enough films, essentially that I'm too ignorant and naive to be able to contribute to anything worthwhile or of any importance. The problem is, the more I read and the more films I watch and the more experiences I have, the more I learn how ignorant and naive I truly am. Because as I increase my knowledge and experience, the more I become aware of entirely new concepts that I never had any idea about. I remember seeing an interview where you said that you love Kafka, and I do too, but generally that you don't actually read that many books. I just wanted to know, how do you reconcile a lack of self-educating in the arts whilst being a significant contributor to the arts?
That's a real good question. I don't know. Here's the thing. I think it's love. If you have an idea that you love, then that's all you need. Forget contributing to anything or anyone. You are in love. And I always say, you know, when you're in love, let's say you fall in love with a girl, but I always use this analogy. Maybe she's not the kind of girl you want to take home and meet mom and dad, but you're in love. There's nothing you can do about it. You're in deep love. And so you get these ideas that you love and go out and translate them to cinema and stay true to those ideas. And don't walk away from any element until it feels correct, and stay true to the ideas and make your film, and you can hold your head up high. And if nobody else likes your film, so what? If you love it, that's all that counts. And you'll feel so good that you translated those ideas that you loved to a piece of cinema that you love, and you'll enjoy the trip 100 times more if you transcend every day and get that bubble of happiness growing. And you can't lose. You cannot lose. Don't worry about what the audience is going to think, what the world is going to think. Worry about realizing those ideas that you fell in love with. Thank you.
Hello, David. I'm Connie.
Hi, Connie.
Pleasure meeting you. I'll try and be quick here. I'm a lover of life. I actually took on a TM meditation in '96 when I was faced with my second cancer diagnosis. And that helped me in every way that you've actually expressed to these filmmakers. I'm not a filmmaker, I'm no one. I'm just, an everyday person. And I came here because I saw the advertisement and I said, it's connected me. So for me, it's connecting me, all the dots in my life, to live a quality life. And I know I'm not interviewing you, but I'm just acknowledging TM, what it's done for me. I dropped it after I got to survival stage. I dropped practicing it because I felt I was going to get roped into some other cult. But the actual methodology worked for me. It gave me the sound of a bird tweeting. So when I think of TM, I think of that bird singing in all that chaos. That's all I can hear. That's all I want to say. So everything you say today makes sense to me.
Okay, Connie, I'd love to tell you. You bring up this thing about a cult or sects or religion. Transcendental meditation is not a religion. You can be an atheist and practice transcendental meditation, an agnostic or a member of any religion. People from all religions practice this technique. And the religious people who practice it say that they appreciate their religion more after transcending every day, and they understand their religion more by practicing transcendental meditation, because understanding grows for everything. Appreciation for life grows. So you don't have to feel that you're joining some strange club. It's a technique, a mental technique that you practice on your own twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, for 20 minutes each time, and then you go about your business and watch your life improve. So Connie, you get back into practice. You go to one of the TM teachers and get your meditation checked so you remember, how to do it properly. And get back, morning and evening meditating. And it's money in the bank, Connie, and you're a beautiful soul. I'm so glad it helped you, but stay with it. You're unfolding your full potential as a human being when you practice every day.
I agree.
The full potential of the human being is enlightenment, supreme enlightenment, unbounded consciousness, infinite consciousness. It's every human being's birthright to one day enjoy supreme enlightenment. And this is an age-old story. Throughout time, people have been sitting in meditation. It seems maybe sometimes less and less strange these days, but for a while it did seem strange, this thing of meditation. But now, I see a time the whole world will be meditating away and be very thankful that they got this technique that works. So back to it, Connie.
Hello, David. My name is Majana, and I am very, very, very happy and very grateful that I've got the opportunity.
Fantastic.
I am a healer, and I have done TM after I read about the Maharishi effect, because God knows, the world needs healing at the moment. So could you please tell us a little bit more about when we are in that zone and we do meditate and do TM, how we actually influence other people? And I would really like to know a little bit, for me, especially my children, but the whole world really needs it at the moment. So if you could just talk a little bit more about the Maharishi effect, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, so for the individual, you could say that we individuals are like light bulbs. And if we're filled with negativity, we broadcast that out. And if you get a gentleman who's just filled with bitter, selfish anger, no one wants to be around this person. So the person is poisoning himself and poisoning his environment. And on the contrary, if you have someone who's got this bliss inside, this bubble of bliss, and all these positive things coming up, they broadcast that out. And people like that feeling. They want to go sit down next to this person and be their friend. And it's just the way life is. And so the Maharishi effect, the name of the David Lynch Foundation, the full name is the David Lynch Foundation for Consciousness-Based Education and World Peace. Maharishi, brought out these technologies for peace, and there's peace-creating groups. And you get a big enough group, and the formula is the square root of 1% of a population. For the entire world, it'd be about 8,000 or 9,000 people practicing Transcendental Meditation and its advanced techniques together in a group. The power of that group is quadratically more than the same number scattered about. So this group is like a powerful lighthouse of peace, of happiness, of this energy that it can affect collective consciousness. So people who are not even meditating will get the same benefits as people who, individuals who meditate. Right. Stress will start leaving collective consciousness. Happiness will start returning. And people won't feel like cutting people's heads off. They won't feel like hurting one another. They'll start enjoying one another. And you'll be able to go anywhere in the world and meet a friend, not an enemy. And this is, it's like, if we watch TV, you see how divided we are all as a people. This is unity. This is a field of unity. Unity in the midst of diversity is peace. They can enliven this field of unity and affect collective consciousness. So I want to support Maharishi's peace-creating groups, and I want people to be happy, practice Transcendental Meditation on their own. Learn this technique. Let's get a happy, peaceful world.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, David. My name's Martin. I'm a former physics teacher, and now I'm a PhD student.
Fantastic.
Love your work and I love your positivity, but I'm just going to go the other direction. You talked about anger, and Bob also talked about the gripes of Roth. I just would like to know more about anger as a starting position, like the Greeks talked about it, like creative destruction, the creative destructive force of Dionysus. I can see it in your work, like Bad Coops is the main protagonist in Twin Peaks. I know it's not real life, but there's the negative energy is also a very positive one, which I think is best sort of summed up. My favourite moment from Twin Peaks is the 9 Inch Nails, which is, that segment, which is just, even just thinking about it seems to shut it down my spine. It's not evil, it's totally creative, it's totally positive, but it's also totally the other way. Could you talk a little bit more about the relationship between the destructive, anger, meditation, and positivity, because they seem to be part of the same equation?
That's a beautiful thing. They say that there's 3 things in creation that go always together. They call them the 3 gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is creating the next step. Rajas is maintaining this one they just built, and tamas is destroying the step that went before. And like in nature, there's things that in the spring, things come up, and then they go to their fullness, and then there's destruction, there's decay, this other side. It all goes together in this thing of evolution. And so, and just like in painting, in painting, you've been going along on a painting and stuff like this, and then you suddenly realize what you've done is just absolute baloney, and you destroy a bunch of things, and out of destruction comes this idea that it saves the day. So it's sort of, like you say, goes hand in hand. But anger, there's righteous anger, where somebody is doing something that you say is totally wrong, hurting other people, and you get very angry. And that righteous anger is like an energy to make you go and want to change things or do whatever you need to do. There's another kind of anger that's this, I call it selfish, bitter anger. It's just anger, festering, hate is in there. It's like a hateful thing. This is poison to that person, poison to the environment. It's not right. And this person is like killing himself and killing, others, making a terrible world. So if this person could dive within and get that happiness going, get rid of that anger and start, treating people, good, it would be very, very good. So some anger is not good, and some anger is very good to, motivate and, get something accomplished. So, but they, and everybody knows which one is which.
Hello, David. My name's Scott. How you doing?
Good deal.
Excellent.
Good.
I'll get your cherries, mate, but I just figured I'd only ever get the opportunity to speak to you once. So, quick question on original content, writing it, and say, for example, someone beats you to the punch and a project presents before your idea gets out. How is it salvageable, or how would you find ways to reshape it?
That is a very good question. Over in Italy, Marconi is inventing the radio, and over in New York City, Nikola Tesla is inventing the radio. It's the same. They didn't know each other, and these ideas are out in everywhere. There are millions and millions of ideas, and so someone else catches an idea that you think is yours. That's a terrible, terrible thing. They beat you to the punch, and it can just ruin things. And so I say you need to first start Transcendental Meditation, because you're going to need to get over that heartache, and that will help you in that regard. Then you're going to need ideas. Now maybe you wait a little bit and see what this person did with that idea. And you say, oh, I thought it was the same idea, but it's so much different than what I would have done that maybe you'd be able to do yours after all. Or you get an idea that, oh, if this and this, and then you've got a brand new thing coming out of the fact that you had to look at it in a different way. So it's ideas, and they'll flow more if you're transcending every day. You'll get enough happiness to overcome that heartache of someone else having the same idea, and it won't be so bad.
Thank you very much, David. This is really great.
Okay. Thank you all very, very much, and have a wonderful time.
We were very, very fortunate. An hour with David Lynch. This is really, really, really great. I just want to conclude with a few things. He actually wasn't supposed to get off, but it was late. There's this beautiful, first of all, that was extraordinary. Really. Is he a man of passion and conviction, and does he like Transcendental Meditation? Sometimes when I'm with him, I say, Dave, dial it down. I teach it. I teach it. You don't have to tell me. I teach it. But he really feels that the access, it's that access to that level of life that we should not ignore. We shouldn't miss. It's a game changer. I do it sometimes. Like, Dave, easy. There's this beautiful, I just want to shift gear just for a minute. There's this wonderful ancient phrase which says, the world is my family. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the world is my family. And for me, I always love this and sharing and becoming more creative and growing and expanding. But in me and David, what do they say? The parent is only as happy as the unhappiest child. And there's a lot of suffering, you know, in the world. And I think it's a beautiful thing what David has done with his foundation to do everything possible to share this experience with people who wouldn't necessarily have the time or the resources or the access. And I'm going to tell you 3 quick, very inspiring stories. And then I'm going to show you a little video that David and his team put together, and then we'll call it, okay? Because I know it's going a little late. Probably bathroom break and all that kind of stuff. The way we do is we have something called quiet time, and we want to offer it to schools here. And kids in these inner city schools start and end each school day with like 10 or 12 minutes of meditation as part of the curriculum. Because the problem of stress for children and what it does to the brain, it's destructive. They say a child's brain is sculpting, that's the term, sculpting the adult brain. So if a child's not sleeping well, if a child is anxious, if a child is depressed, that doesn't suddenly change when you turn 18 or 21. That is the adult brain. And in the schools, I can just speak for the United States, but I'm sure it's similar here. The Surgeon General said, if adults are swimming in an ocean of stress, our children are drowning in it. So in Chicago, the violence in Chicago is so much. Is this too much of a transition from infinite, unbounded, infinite truth? Which I love, David. We've traveled all over the world many, many times together. The University of Chicago put out a request for grassroots organizations in Chicago. What can you do to help us stop the violence and increase the attendance and reduce the arrests and reduce the drug abuse for kids in the toughest schools, in the toughest neighborhoods in Chicago? And 230 organizations submitted proposals, and they selected 3. And David's foundation was one of the 3. And they gave us $300,000 to do a very high-level scientific study on several of the schools in the most violent neighborhoods. And they were studying many different things, including graduation, academic performance, etc. The results in the first year were so significant that last year they increased that from $300,000, they gave us an additional $1 million to bring this to many more schools. And the results were so significant this year. Now understand, nobody has money for education, public education, anywhere. This year the results were so significant that they increased it to another $2.6 million. And it's so successful, particularly interventions for arrests. When kids are out of school, if they get arrested, they get in the prison pipeline. And the results were so significant. If they have an intervention for arrests, if they get 5% reduction in arrests, that's considered a grand success during the summer months. And the results on these 2,000 kids, a 50% reduction in arrests. So significant that the federal government just gave $200,000, which was just because they had it. We're asking for much more to expand the program. We're now looking to bring it to 4,000 kids in New York, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Los Angeles. I really want to bring it to Melbourne. I want to bring it to Sydney. I want to bring it to everywhere because our children are dying from it. You know, they can handle it, but we know youth suicide here. So that's one thing I want to tell you that's very moving. And our veterans, big problem with veterans, and I know here in first responders, you don't call them first responders, you call them emergency services. Post-traumatic stress, the amygdala, that section of the brain which is the emotion center, on hyper-arousal, overreacting to everything. 21 veterans commit suicide every day in America. And you know what? 70% of them are from Vietnam. Think about that. They've been living with the trauma for their whole life. And their kids grow up and they retire. So the US government gave us $2.4 million 3 years ago to do a study on post 9/11 vets. And they compared it to usual care and something called prolonged exposure. Prolonged exposure is this, you know what they do with that? You are in a Humvee, it gets blown up. This is quite a contrast from David Lynch, I apologize. But I'm going to end with a good story. And they show you videos over and over and over again of people being blown up in Humvees. So you get numb, and that's how you get cured for post-traumatic stress. So they compared and they found that TM was far better than usual care and was better than, obviously, prolonged exposure. And the most important reason is it was much less expensive and the veterans loved doing it and they hated prolonged exposure. So here's my final story, which is very moving. And it just goes to show you that you can't predict, you can't know who's in there, what person's in there. So, in New York City, there's a homeless shelter where they do vocational training. So it's a year-long program. And they do vocational training, and they have, the homeless have to commit to be clean and sober, and they get a job. They get trained in a job. And we offered TM to all the, for free, to all the men. It was a men's facility. And because the transition is so hard to go from streets to this to that. And my friend Mario Orsatti taught some men, and he said, you've got to meet this guy, Joseph. So I go to see Joseph. Joseph has been in for about a year. He's 6'4". His face is like leather from living out on the streets. He's missing his front teeth. And we meditated together, and I said, Joseph, Mario wants me to tell you a story. So Joseph had a master's degree from Yale in philosophy. Joseph, when he was at when he was at Yale, we used to do some drinking with friends, no big deal. Of course, you can't get a job, a master's degree in philosophy from Yale, so doing whatever. So he ended up in the financial services industry. And he was in the Twin Towers. And 15 minutes before the Twin Towers hit, he walked out to run an errand, and all of the people he worked with were lost. Joseph was so devastated that he started drinking a little bit and then more and more and more. He lost his wife and kids. He lost his job. He lost his home. Within 6 months, he was homeless on the streets for years. His story to me, because he loved meditating, he loved that experience of that field of unity, he said to me, isn't it interesting that when I was at Yale, one of my favorite sutras or lines or proverbs of my life was about the fundamental love thy neighbor as thyself, that fundamental unity of existence, where he said, the line is, I am that, thou art that, depth. All of this is nothing but that. And he said, isn't it interesting that something I learned in college umpteen years ago, it took me to end up in a homeless shelter to learn a meditation technique where I could experience it directly for myself. And I tell you, the lessons I've learned, because I'm just a regular guy, you know, I'm not into, never knew famous people growing up, not a wealthy person, just taught meditation for 45 years. The different experiences I've had is that now, when I walk down the streets of New York and I see these poor men and women on the streets, I don't judge. Because you just don't know. And the world is our family. And so David's foundation, there are many different foundations in place to help in so many essential ways. And there are different meditation techniques, and my feeling is it's not either or, it's yes and. In a toolbox, it's a yes and. Fine, you do this, mindful, fine. Transcend too. It's a big world. It's not just yes and. And so David is not just a person who just put his name. He's traveled around the world many, many times. He's written a book, he's done videos. He's, as you just saw, an amazingly deep and passionate person. And that I'm just saying all of this because it is an honor to me beyond words that Mark and Gavin and others have started the David Lynch Foundation here. And our goal is just this, to bring this, make this available, remove all the obstacles so that anyone in this country who wants to have that experience can have it and live a better life. And to that end, I was asked to write this book, which I had no interest in writing. And I said, okay, but I'll only write it. I told them that I said 100% of my advance and 100% of all the profits and proceeds that come to me here in the UK, here in Australia, goes back to Australia to teach these kids to meditate. So 100% of it. So when you get that, you're contributing to children meditating. And I wanted you to know that. It's a non-profit organization. And my final story is, I don't know if you know who Maria Shriver is. Maria Shriver is Bobby Kennedy's niece. And I taught Maria to meditate. And I was telling her that one of the things that I always wanted to do as a young person, 17-year-old, is I always wanted to work with Bobby Kennedy to change the world. And she said, well, I just want to work with you to change the world. So it was like this full circle. So a meditation that can really do the things that David was saying in his understated way that are true. I'm not sure that everybody has these. I've never had the experience of vibrating electric bliss. Everyone's different. I just really enjoy the relaxation that comes from meditation. So, don't, hey, wait a minute, why aren't I vibrating? And the other thing I also wanted to say is that Maharishi may have told John Lennon he could write down, but generally speaking, he tells people to just finish your meditation, you'll go deeper, better ideas. But anyway, I really want to thank you very, very much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time.
Just one little point we missed out earlier, and that is that Bob himself is actually the executive director of the David Lynch Foundation in America. So just the last 3 or 4 weeks, you can imagine just every year how much money they have to raise to keep that foundation going. And Bob is the head of that organisation. To be away from home, from America for 4 weeks now, on the road in America, in the middle of the American winter, out of a suitcase, media morning till night, and to top it all off, had to spend a week in the United Kingdom in the middle of winter, which would depress almost anyone. For him to be here at the end of all that, to give his time, and you can see the energy and compassion that he has. It is really, really a great gift for us to have him here in Australia. So could you please all give another really big round. You want to see a little video? Bob says, more David Lynch. A little video about David's foundation. Work they did.
The idea of what you're doing, of putting this into schools, I think is a fabulous thing.
Before, I held everything in, and when I couldn't take it anymore, I took it out on somebody else. Now, it just goes away now.
I feel like all the stress is just leaving my body, all the situation fog was just clearing out.
I got more concentration, I social better, everything just like 2 times better basically.
It took me roughly 5 years to admit that I had PTSD. Transcendental meditation has taken the stress out of my life. It has made me relax. The anger's gone.
Just because you can't see a wound doesn't mean it's not there. To know that something as small of a concept of 20 minutes, twice a day, can make me feel like I feel now, that's a gift that you can't buy.
Within 90 days, I was off all the anxiety pills, antidepressants, the pain medication. You don't have to suffer anymore. There's a better way.
I didn't know I had post-traumatic stress. The first experience meditating with TM, my body got a chance to just really relax. And my self-esteem is a lot better than it's ever been in my entire life.
When I started meditating, it changed my demeanor. I really felt like it changed the dynamics for me, the way I responded or interacted with people. And also not sitting like this, sitting like this, because I got rest.
I went through a really dark time in my life where I didn't want to wake up in the morning at all. Now when I wake up in the morning, I feel happy, I feel blessed.
Meditation has significantly helped my recovery, and I think it should be taught in every rehab facility there is.
Transcendental meditation is the only proven form of meditation to reduce blood pressure. It affects the cortisol, the epinephrine, the whole system just relaxes.
When people start to meditate, they're doing things more effectively and more efficiently, and time seems to open up.
I meditate before every performance now, and I find that it keeps me out of my head. It's a much more enjoyable way to perform. TM has helped me to be more open to new possibilities.
I really have found that I am more aware of those stressful moments that are still going to happen even after meditation, but my reaction to them. I recognize them, and I just am at a peaceful state.
You have to give yourself a break. You have to give yourself a moment to revive, unplug, rejuvenate, and Transcendental Meditation does that for me.
I think this is what people need. They don't need high-minded talk so much as results.
Real change for the good truly begins within.
I was just reflecting during the video and thinking of all Bob's great work with those less fortunate in our community, and thought, wouldn't it be great while we have Bob in Melbourne to maybe do something with Collingwood supporters? Thank you all very much for being here. We have come to the conclusion of the day. We really appreciate your attendance. Just a couple of little things of housekeeping. As we said, we're really respectful of Bob's time today, and there are a few people that we're really, really keen for him to see straight after the event, so we're just going to siphon him off very quickly for 15 or 20 minutes. If you're really, really keen, maybe for Bob to sign up a personal copy of your book, if you're happy to wait around for those 20, 25 minutes, I'm sure he'd be very happy to do that. He has also, however, very kindly pre-signed 100 copies of his book, so they will be just sold out in the foyer area. Larry Clark, I think, will be looking after that. And it's a really great, not just for people that haven't learned to meditate, but I believe, and I know a number of people in the room already meditate, it's a fantastic little gift for friends, family who, you know, because everyone else is stressed and we're not, it's a really good way to give them something very simple and they can read and decide for themselves. So talk to Larry. I think if you want a few books at a special rate, 3 books or 5 books, I'm sure he'll be able to do something for you there. And as Bob said, 100% of the percentage that would go to Bob is going to the David Lynch Foundation for Australians. So for those who are possibly interested in hearing a little bit more about Transcendental Meditation, we do have the great fortune of having a few local accredited Transcendental Meditation teachers with us today, and they'll be just standing up the back of the room. So if that is something that you would like to ask some questions about, how the course runs, the course fees, what you need to do to learn, just find a teacher at the back of the room. If you're not sure who they are, just look for the ones that are really calm and peaceful, and that would be great. Also, there's a little handout that I think people will be handing on the way out, so if you want to go and do your own research away from here, it will have the website of the accredited website. That's very important. If you want the benefits that David and Bob have talked about today from Transcendental Meditation, very important that you learn from a certified teacher. So that website that you'll see, tm.org.au or tm.org if you're listening in internationally, is the way to go. And just finally, on behalf of the David Lynch Foundation of Australia, I personally would like to thank David and particularly Bob for everything they have done and for giving us the opportunity to launch here in Australia, and also to extend an open invitation to anyone here today that would like to partner with us, whether it's in terms of programs and projects about disadvantaged or at-risk populations that we can help you with, whether it's research institutions or universities that would like to come and help research and evaluate our programs, because ultimately we believe that this is what governments should be funding, and we want to have the research and the data that we can present to them so that they will implement and fund these types of projects. And of course, fundraising and donations is going to be a very big part of our foundation, so anyone who would like to contribute in that way, we'd love to speak to you as well. But thank you all very, very much for coming. Again, a big thank you to Bob and David Lynch, and also to Gavin Evans, who's just walking towards the door now. Without Gavin, this event probably wouldn't have happened or been anywhere near as successful as it is. So a big round of applause.